Welcome to the Miscarriage Hope Desk podcast, where we help women struggling with recurrent pregnancy loss by sharing stories of hope and interviews with experts in the field of fertility and miscarriage. If you want to download our free lab checklist, go to miscarriagehopedesk.com/labs. Again, you will go to miscarriagehopedesk.com/LABS to download your free checklist. If you want to connect with others going through recurrent miscarriage, please check out our show notes for a link to our Facebook group. Now I'm going to hand it over to your host, Laura Bowder, for today's episode.
Welcome back to the Miscarriage Hope Desk podcast. Today I have Aimee Raupp with me. She's a women's health and wellness expert. She is also a best-selling author, and I hear that she's been referred to as the fertility detective because she helps thousands of women figure out what is in the way of their health and fertility. So Aimee, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes, I'm really excited to dig into all of your expertise, but I would love to give you a chance to tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of your journey to how you came to be doing what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, about me professionally, I've been an acupuncturist and herbalist in clinical practice for 17 years. It'll be 17 years very soon. And prior to that, I have a degree in biology and chemistry, and I did some graduate work in neuroscience and research and things of that nature. My plan was to become a medical doctor, and I actually didn't get accepted the first time I applied to medical school, which took me a long time to get over, but in retrospect, realized that it was like such a great blessing for my life because of the opportunities it carved for me in other departments. And, studying Chinese medicine it's an amazing medicine. And I'm obsessed with it. And I love what I do as a practitioner and a clinician. And then about 10 years ago, I started writing books, and that changed the direction, I think, of my career, where I started reaching people all over the world. Mm-hmm. And about 3 or 4 years ago, I started the online portion of my business where I was doing more coaching with women, in all sorts of parts of the world and helping them, figure out what was going on with their health and mainly their fertility. My second book is called Yes, You Can Get Pregnant. That came out in 2015. And so that really changed things for me a lot. I still consider myself very much a general health practitioner. And one thing I always say is that fertility is an extension of health. And when I get your health in good working order, your fertility should thrive. So it's never been for me about the positive pregnancy test for my clients. It's really for me about optimal health and well-being, and I always say health is mental, it's emotional, it's physical, it's nutritional, right? So it's all those combined.
Yeah.
And of course, I've evolved over the last 2 decades and so has my teachings and my work. But you're also really proud, though, to look back at my first book and see that, I haven't changed much. My integrity and my mission and my goals and my directions have really remained the same for many years. And so, and then in my personal life, I'm a mom. I got naturally pregnant at 40 and gave birth right before my 41st birthday. I've been married to my husband for, as many years. We were pregnant when we got married, but intentionally. And then last year I had a miscarriage myself. So I do understand that on the level of many women who have gone through something similar. Got pregnant, easily / not entirely on purpose at about to be 45 years old, and everything was going well. At 10 weeks, the baby stopped growing. It was Turner syndrome. And so I had to have a DNC, which that sucked. But yeah, we're still in the game and see how things turn out for me. But so that was an interesting, I treat fertility challenges all day long, all the time, all over the world. I'd never myself gone through a challenge like that. And that was, in retrospect, and not to downplay it by any means, it's devastating and sad. And I was very public about it. And that felt really healing and therapeutic. But it was, a really good experience on many levels to really understand my demographic, and then to also allow people to come in and support me in a way that, I'm not always the best at. And then let me be let someone else, like I have my own detectives, if you will, in my circle.
Right.
Let myself be the patient, which I've learned how to be better at over the years, but was definitely not good at it for a long time.
Yes.
But yeah, so I mean, there's layers, I suppose, to the work I do. The miscarriage definitely triggered things of like, do I really know what I'm talking about? How could I have a miscarriage? That kind of stuff. And I went through a lot of that, to know, like, you're human and this happens, and things could be perfectly aligned and it still happens, and it's nobody's fault and there's nothing to blame. So there's a lot of that emotional side of things that came up for me that I'd never quite experienced in my life. I mean, I've had traumas and, things to work through, but miscarriage is a pretty intense thing.
It is. It's, it's its own kind of loss, I think, for a lot of different reasons. And I think your journey is kind of an interesting one too, because a lot of people that I've talked to for this podcast do, like, they experience infertility or a miscarriage, and that kind of leads them toward wanting to work with women who've experienced similar things. Whereas you have been working with this population for a long period of time, and then
that's how I do my
us.
life. Basically, that's exactly how I do my life. Like, it's the cart before the horse always. That's the Aimee show, basically. But when I was writing Yes, You Can Get Pregnant, which I was 37 at the time, I think I was writing it. And or 30, no, gosh, 37 or 38, I can't remember, but something around there. And I think I was 39 when it came out. So and the subtitle is, natural ways to improve your fertility now and into your 40s. And but I had the experience. I had the clinical experience. At that point, I had been like 10 plus years in practice. I'd helped a lot of women. And I definitely, from a research perspective and, from all those things, academically, I knew what I was talking about, but I definitely got backlash from people because they were like, you don't know, you've never even tried to get pregnant. You don't know, and then fast forward to me being 40 and trying for the first time. It was a very conscious decision to make our son. And I remember my husband saying to me, because he was 40, he's 4 years older than me, or 3 years older than me. So I think he was like 44. And he said, oh, should I get my sperm checked? What should I do? And I said, no, I think we should just do what I would tell any couple to do first, is to just try. We can get baseline stuff done. So I had my thyroid and my vitamin D checked and all that stuff. And we, and I did have kind of my fingers crossed of like, God, I hope what I talk about works. Cause I'd been practicing what I preached for many years, and was hopeful that was preserving my fertility, if you will, and putting me in the best position possible to get pregnant when I found the guy. I hadn't found the partner, and I didn't want to do it alone. I had many people along the way over the years encourage me to freeze my eggs or do it on my own as I was approaching 40. And, I really just, and that's me too. I really can dig my heels in the ground of like, I very much believe in what I preach and what I've learned and what I've seen scientifically. And I know that I can manage and preserve my fertility. And I'm going to do it the way I see it happening. And I know I'm going to meet the guy, and I know I'm going to do it. And, we luckily got pregnant very quickly, the second month, and he's healthy. He's going to be, he's 5. He just turned 5. And so it was like, then I think I got a lot more credibility almost with the rest of the community, because they were like, all right, so she does know what she's talking about, and I, I was proud of myself, because there was this moment where I'm like, well, this has worked for so many other women that were older than me, younger than me. It should work for me, But yeah, so it is, it's interesting how things unfolded. And, and then even the miscarriage, was just, I think, I use it in many ways, if you will, but it's a great way to, I guess, deepen my work and understand like a new layer. Like now, all of a sudden, I don't want to, I think everybody's journey is so different and you can't ever compare, but, I'm in the group now with my girls. You know what I mean? They know I understand their pain, and on whatever level it is. And, I would never say that I understand the pain of some woman who's gone through, whatever. One loss is too many, in my opinion. But, there's,
Yeah.
Whatever, it's insanity, right? The things we've seen, and it's devastating. But to understand it on just that level of wanting something and feeling like it's been taken from you, for no good reason, is it's devastating.
Yeah, it is. And you know um I think you're exactly right. Like, nobody goes through it the same way, but I'm sure there is a level of comfort to be working alongside somebody who has had that experience, and who understands it. And I think women who haven't gone through something like this can be empathetic,
100%.
for sure, and could imagine what it might be like. But I still think it's a different
Until you
connection
feel it,
point.
it's just, it's fascinating. I think, I'll never get that sono. I have come to terms with it, I suppose, and I don't, it doesn't hurt nearly as much. But like that moment when they're like, "I'm so sorry," like I don't know that I'll ever go away. I hope I'll go through a sono again at that same time frame, and they'll say something very encouraging.
Right.
But it's like that, it's sealed. And I do think, I think there's this level where I just remember there was like a large, a good amount of my women that I've worked with for a long time, who came to me as like the authority and the person to guide them and lead them. They really trusted like my scientific nature and the things I would, and my intuitive nature, and the programs I would put them on. But I felt like they still always looked at me like I never quite got it. I never quite understood. And there was always a little bit of a barrier between us. And not that I wanted what happened to happen to me, but I'll tell you, it changed relationships with so many of my clients too, because there was this level of like, we don't want you to suffer, but now I think you finally know, like, you know what I mean? Like this other layer of things that perhaps, I just don't think you can totally, it's just nice to know that someone understands on some level what you've been through.
For sure. And I think you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation that health, spans so many different things. We're talking about that emotional level. We're talking about that physical level. So in terms of being just like physically healthy and having your fertility as an extension of that, what do you start out with your own clients as far as like lab tests that you recommend or diet changes that you go through with them? Like, what does that process look like?
We do a pretty detailed health history, right, in the first meeting. And so whether it's me or one of my associates, I have them in the clinic, and I have them as coaches now too. And all of us are acupuncturists by training, and an herbalist. And so we do our intake the way we're trained. And, it is, Chinese medicine is detective work. I mean, that is basically what it is. And, it's always getting to the root of the issue. It is not finding a Band-Aid. And so, we do a complete health history, and I have to ask you everything from sleep to poop to, skin conditions to headaches. And I slowly put pieces together and then decide what I think is going to be the best plan of attack for that client. And I always remind them, like, listen, what I want to see change is like, I want to see more cervical mucus with ovulation. You got to have less cramps and clotting with your period. I want to see a healthy bowel movement every day. I want your eczema to clear up. That's going to tell me we're moving in the right direction. So I empower them too, to understand and then make recommendations based on, the case as it presents itself. Generally speaking, pretty much everyone is going organic and eating, lots of protein and good quality fats and lots of cooked vegetables. And we're probably pulling gluten and dairy and soy. I mean, depending on the case. Some cases I just got off the phone with a case, and I don't think she needs gluten out of her diet. I just want her on like fermented sprouted grains. So like a good quality sourdough, and dairy to be full fat. and organic and grass fed, right? So there's different cases, but the case before that is like strict autoimmune paleo because, she has Hashimoto's and she's had one miscarriage. And,
Yeah.
so it just really depends on the case. And,
Sure.
but I don't think you can figure that out unless you really spend time with the case, right? And so
Yeah.
that's where we come in and really unpack it. I mean, I can do that too in some of my larger groups where I'm not getting the one-on-one time, but we can just, I let them distill it down. I make them take a quiz and like figure out the kinks in their system and then kind of go from there. I think everyone, baseline is like a full thyroid panel, including thyroid antibodies, vitamin D, ferritin, iron. That stuff is super important to look at. My case this morning, she came to me, I think in the summer, she had a miscarriage maybe in March or something like that. And then she found out she had one clotting factor issue. Her doctor then told her she was, I think she was like 39 at the time, and she was a little overweight. Like 85% of your eggs are all bad. I won't work with you. I won't do any more IUIs. I don't support this clotting factor issue. Your probably best bet is donor eggs. You're too old. Like, I mean, just crushed everything out of her. And then she found me somehow and read my book. And then she did one of our group coaching programs. And she said, she reminded me this of today, that like, she's like in a group setting, like there was like 8 other women. She was like, you said to me right away, like, I want you to get your thyroid antibodies tested and I'll be very surprised if they don't come back positive. And I was correct. And it was just because based on the symptomology, I've seen it so much, you can start to put it together. And that sent her down a whole path. And now she's not yet pregnant again, but I think she's very close. She's dropped like 30 pounds and her periods are regulated. And like, I mean, she's feeling her best. And so the next step, we didn't try for a couple months because I wanted to really just get all testing done and make sure there was no other clotting factor issues, because it was kind of just random that she found that one. No one really did a full miscarriage panel on her after that. No one would really do one after just one loss,
Just
right?
one, right.
So it was something like, I can't remember the whole thing, but it was like a family history of something. And her gynecologist was like, oh, maybe you have it too. So they just looked at that one and she had it. And I was like, you need a complete miscarriage panel. So typically I'll do that too with girls if they've had a loss. And, this case was interesting. Like she had these other autoimmune stuff and she really just wants to deeply heal herself. Like we talked about that today, actually on our call, like her deepest goal is like health and vitality for her and then the baby. And she doesn't feel like she's losing time, even though now she's 40. And so she was willing to take like 3 months off while we did all these things. And so waiting on some last labs, and like we're actually planning like December is when she said to start trying again. But yeah, I mean, it's like, I think that a lot of things are overlooked, and it's appalling how often I see Hashimoto's playing such a big role in fertility challenges. And, and then, in the Department of Miscarriages, that the clotting factor panel is mandatory, I mean, I think even after one, I mean, or at least at the very least, you're, acting as if you have the MTHFR mutation, and you're looking into all these other potential categories. I mean, as you know, miscarriage is, not uncommon by any means. And what 20%, we'll just average it out, if women have them and there's nothing wrong, and you'll go on to have a healthy pregnancy and, everything's great. But then there's this subcategory of recurrent pregnancy losses where, I always say there should never be back-to-back losses without a live birth in between. And if there is, then we have to look deeper. So again, really depends on the case, but I'll see girls too that have never been pregnant, but they're pretty apparent. And I suppose I would say like their inflammatory / autoimmune symptoms. And so I'll encourage a battery of tests because they're looking and they're curious. And the last thing I want to do is help them get pregnant and then they're going to lose it. Right. So it really does depend on the case, but I think what it always starts with is us really getting a clear picture of how every single aspect of the body works. And then not to underestimate too the emotional piece. If there's a lot of stress, and I hate to say that stress plays a role, but it really does impact your hormones, and so bottom line, it does. And it also, I always differentiate of like, there's emotional inflammation and there's physical inflammation. And we do want both in check for, I think for optimal fertility.
Yeah. That's I like the kind of the image of physical and emotional inflammation. And I'm wondering, like, how do we, it seems like physical can
It's
be easier
obvious.
to address in certain ways, right? Like, yeah, like, especially to someone like you, I'm sure you see people all the time. You're like, oh, well, we can fix this, or I know what's going on. The emotional side, I think, is harder for women to recognize in themselves, and probably harder for people on the outside to see as well.
Yeah, um it is. It's not easy. I think you can catch it, right? I mean, I guess, you do it long enough, you just start to hear like the way they talk about themselves or
Mm,
about the situation, and you can suss out maybe the anger or the grief or the harsh self-criticism.
yeah.
And I saw that too with me in the miscarriage. There was this thing of like, my body failed me. What did I
Yeah.
do wrong? What did I miss? How could I let this happen? Right? Like, very judgmental. I was very judgmental of myself. And thankfully I have people that called me out on that. And I guess I've also done enough of my own work that I was able to work through it. But to really, that's the piece I think you start to see. And and that the other piece too is like, I have to do all this to get pregnant. And like, I hate this because there's a woman down the street eating McDonald's and she's getting pregnant just easily, and like, I totally get that anger. And
Yep.
believe me, I get it. And, I've never been a girl before fertility stuff either, that like could ever get away with eating that poorly, because my body just reacts like viciously, just hates it. And so like, I figured that out over the years. But like, a big thing I try to do is, I want you to do this for you. I want you to nourish you. I want you to see that this is actually an act of self-care, of self-love, and that you're tuning into your body. So you start to see like there's a major disconnect in that sense of like, um, oh yeah, like then I'll binge on X, Y, and Z. And sure, like I have stomach issues and diarrhea for the next 3 days, but like whatever, you know what I mean? I got my period, I'm pissed. And I get that. And I'm not saying I'm not judging that, but what I like to do is then get them to reconnect. Like, do you see
Yeah.
that this behavior leads to this, right? I say it in my book, Body Belief, of our thoughts dictate our behavior dictates our health. And so the first step is to really start to reconnect to like, what are the thoughts? And a lot of women, it is like, they're, it's true. And I think anybody listening would say this, like, I will do anything to get to this child. And so it's very easy to get them to commit to a diet and commit to the lifestyle. But I take it a step further of like, I really want them to actually own it and enjoy it, and not just do it because Aimee says it's going to help you get pregnant faster. Right.
Yeah.
Because that's like, where's that getting us? And sometimes that works, but for a lot of the women, not so much. Like, especially like, and again, you can't underestimate what anybody has, or you can't compare. Everybody's been through this. So whether you've been in it 3 months or 3 years, you could still have the same level of pain, I think. But it is like the deeper they're in it, I think, the deeper it is to like shift out and twist out those beliefs that are really like, it's comparison and it's anger, because it's just like, why me? Why have I been left out of this? Why is it so hard for me and so easy for everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
And I do think the first step is you really have to honor it. Like, yes, that absolutely sucks, and none of us actually have an answer for you, other than I do think we have some answers, like you just have genetic predispositions that don't allow you to do that. And you might have
Yeah.
Hashimoto's, or you might have whatever, MTHFR, or your body just doesn't like that thing, and you keep doing that thing, and so it, you get clogged up faster. That's kind of how I see it. But and I always say fertility, like from a Chinese medicine perspective, is like when your body has like an overabundance of like chi and blood and the good stuff to say, I'm going to make a human. So
Right.
some people have that disposition much easier than others, and I don't think there's anyone to blame. That's just kind of how we were made, and we have to learn to work with what we have. And so for some people, that does require a little fine tuning when it comes to diet and supplements and lifestyle, and for others, not so much. And the older we get, the more clogged we get as time goes on, if we don't support our bodies in the proper ways, right? but so it's really just unpacking that emotional piece and then figuring, and then some women have very obvious traumas, right, where I've had 6 losses, or I was sexually abused when I was X, or whatever it is, my boyfriend in college died, and like, so there's some obvious things that they'll write it in the paperwork of like, because I asked them any significant traumatic experiences. Some women it's 6 failed IVFs, right, you know what I mean, like, and there's no pregnancies, and so it's getting them to talk about that and listening, and then just figuring out where those kinks are. And it just basically, it's like, all I try to do is just get them to approach themselves in a more soft way, like a kinder way, and just have compassion for themselves. There's like, it's very much like a fix it mentality. Like, I'm just going to go in, we're going to fix this thing, and then I'm going to get the baby. And then my life will continue, and it's like, yes, that sounds awesome. Doesn't always really work out that way though. Or
Rarely,
we
I
lose
would
ourselves
think.
along the way. Maybe that's it. We lose ourselves in it, and then, and that's, I don't know. Part of me feels like that's unfair to this child that you're bringing through. Doesn't the child deserve all of you,
Yeah. Yes. No, I think that's exactly right. And I think the emotional piece, I don't know how big a role the emotional piece plays in the actual, fertility side of it. I know you said that stress is definitely a hormone. It can impact your hormones, but I do know that it will impact your experience of that pregnancy and that
100%.
birth because I did not take the correct amount of time to like heal from a
Heal it
loss
all.
before going on to my successful pregnancy. And it was not a pleasant experience at all.
No, it's like PTSD in the pregnancy. I've seen that where it's like there's so many different ways women have described it, but my one patient said it the best, where she said, I spent so long being on the outside of that circle, and now I'm in it and I don't feel like I belong. Like, it was like, really, just, and her husband's a psychotherapist, so I think she could put it into words so well, where most of us can't, where it's like, that's exactly what it is. It's just this thing of like, you've just spent so long, like, in the neck, on the side of it not working, on the side of envy, and you know what I mean, and then all of a sudden you're in it, and it's uncomfortable to enjoy it because it's like, it's surreal on so many levels too.
Yeah, it's like I never really trusted it. It was always like waiting
well, that's it,
for something to go wrong.
And that is trauma. That's called trauma, and so, but you have plenty of time to heal it. And I think, I mean, I get spiritual about this type of stuff too. I do think that the spirit of the child who comes through is very clear on what they're coming into and understands their role. You know what I mean? So, so your child said that this is good enough, and I'm going to help with the rest. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to heal it all before I come through. And I don't think we have to heal it all. I don't think there is such a thing as healing it all. But the awareness, is big. And yeah, it's just part of your journey and what you then get to help to continue educate women on, but I think there's, there can just be such a deep hole with this kind of loss and struggle. And it's just really important, no matter what you do, I don't know that you fix it, but that you just honor that you've been where you've been at. And, I always say that to girls who've had losses. I'm like, I think you just sign up for the first 20 weeks sucking. They really do. They suck. You're scared.
Yeah.
And then you figure it out, and then you spend the next 20 weeks stressed and anxious because you're going to have a child and you weren't prepared for that.
That's right.
And that's how it goes, and so it is nice if you can enjoy some of it, but it's okay. You get to enjoy it when they're here too.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks for indulging in my little side story there. But so, okay. So we have the emotional side and we have that physical side. And I really liked what you said about like your fertility is an extension of your health. So what is the connection, or what different kinds of connections do you see with clients that you've worked with? Just what changes have you seen, and how do those kind of all work together?
Because you'll see it where it's like, oh no, I'm healthy. I eat healthy. I feel great. It's just, I'm not getting pregnant, and then you peel back the layers and it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm late. My first 2 days before my period, like, it's terrible cramping, or I get a migraine, or, I'm an emotional wreck, or I barely bleed, or I bleed really heavy, or have heavy clots. I'm wiped out. I can't get out of bed. I can't go to work. And a reminder of like, that's not normal. Or it's just like healthy periods, healthy flow. I don't wake up rested every day. My hair doesn't grow well, my nails, my skin, I'm constipated, or I have diarrhea, I have heartburn, I have allergies. You name it. I mean, there's a ton of symptoms that most women have that, and I think most of us have, that we're very disconnected from, because we just learn to live with these things. Like, but the obvious thing is I'm not getting pregnant, right? All these other things, fine. I can live with them. It's fine.
Sure.
I cannot live with the fact that I'm not getting pregnant, right? So I need to fix that. And so what they do all notice is like everything transforms in the process to the baby, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, I have an awesome job. Like the number one thing I hear is like, and I might sound obnoxious when I say this, and I hope I don't, but like, you changed my life. Like, I've never felt better in my life, and my skin looks better, and emotionally I feel better. I feel heard. I feel supported. I'm proud of myself. Like the one woman I was just on before, she said, I am, for the first time in my life, I look in the mirror and I actually like who I see. And I was just like, she's not pregnant yet, but to me, I'm like, job is done. Job is done. I've done it. You call me in a couple months when you're pregnant. Like, cause that, I have the chills, but it's like, that's it. That's my job. That's what I want to do. And that's what we see. And it's like, yeah, can I promise that to everybody? No. I mean, and it's like, are there struggles in between? Sure. And is it painful to unpack the shit? Yeah. But I don't know. It's so awesome to watch, because you basically get to see a woman come back into herself. It's like before, who you were before these traumas hit you and kind of destroyed your soul, right? Because they do. It's like you forgot who you were. You forgot that, so naively you were like, yeah, I'm going to have 2 kids and we're going to live here. We're going to do this. And that's what I try to get them back to, is not naively getting them back, like empowering them, but like, that was your vision. And I think it's really going to happen for you. But maybe we just need, for some reason there was an obstacle here and there, and we'll get you to the other side, but, and about that emotional inflammation piece too, it's like, there is data to support, obviously, like our stressful thoughts just keep us in like a fight or flight. So if every day is you're under an attack because of what your body's failing to do for you, and you're criticizing it, on end, that does keep you in a chronic fight or flight state. And that is not the state that the body wants to get pregnant in. It's just not ideal. Does it happen? Of course, there are women in war zones that get pregnant. They're either internal or external war zones. It happens. But what the body really does want is kind of like calm and peace, and you can watch what the hormones do. It's like every day your body has a choice, basically. Do I go down the stress pathway, or do I go down the reproductive pathway? And they're 2 different pathways. They don't typically coexist. They kind of can't, so it's really one or the other. And to think about that, like, and is the stress just in your mind? Is the stress just you beating yourself up every day for the things that you missed or didn't do, or you waited too long, or your partner didn't do, or the doctors didn't catch, or the medication was wrong, right? It's just like, and where can you just start to forgive that? And it just soothes. And then it's like you come back to your baseline, which stress exists and it's not going to go away. It's just really how you react to it, and how long you how deep in the rabbit hole you let it take you.
Yeah, I think the empowerment piece is really important, and kind of taking that back. We feel like we lose so much control. I feel like in this process.
You do. And that is it. And it does feel so out of control. And then you look at the stats, and then the doctors are telling you this, and, when I'm telling you something else, and who do you believe? And, it's just, it's mercurial is the word I used. And yes, you can get pregnant. And I think that's exactly it. It's like, it's just a big mind, FUCK. It just is the whole thing. And so you have to find your piece is going to look different than somebody else's piece on the journey, but you got to find what's going to work for you. And I do think like doing the diet and all that is very empowering. It's like, okay, this is my part. And then I'm going to go in if I need fertility treatments, or if I have recurrent pregnancy loss and I need to take steroids and Lovenox in the pregnancy, I surrender to that, like, cause they're the experts, and so it's just finding the piece wherever you can find it. And also I think, I think a team is really important, and deciding like, okay, this person's managing this person, I manage this, and this person manages this. And like, I surrender to that, you know?
Right. Well, and you mentioned the doctor might be saying one thing, someone else might be saying
Yeah.
something else. And I know that doctors definitely don't take the same amount of time, and they don't usually do the same kind of investigation that you're describing.
Yes.
So what would your advice be? There's a lot of women who just think like, well, I've had 1, 2, 3 losses and the doctor says everything's fine. And so
Bullshit. Bullshit.
What do I do? Like,
bullshit. If you want to edit that out, you can, but absolute bullshit. It is not fine, and it's not all that your eggs are bad. And it's not just all your age. That, like, nature isn't that stupid. It does not keep selecting an egg or creating an embryo that is gonna die. It just doesn't do that. It's not that stupid. And so, like, and you don't have to trust me on it. Go and do research on that. But nature is not that stupid. If all your eggs were bad, you just wouldn't get pregnant. You wouldn't keep having losses. So something else is going on. And so you need like a fertility detective to come in and help you. And they're called reproductive immunologists. And maybe people like me too, but I mean, from a Western perspective of like, you need someone who takes recurrent pregnancy loss seriously, someone who's like an endocrinologist, like a reproductive endocrinologist, but also looks at the immunology. And I just think it's one of those things where you can't take no for an answer. And it's not about donor eggs. Like, you can go get pregnant with a donor egg, you're probably going to miscarry that too, because, and I sound super harsh and critical, but it's because I've seen it all and it drives me insane.
Yeah.
And then that girl goes on to get pregnant naturally and carries a baby to term when we figure these things out. So and I've had physicians who are clients of mine, and they've kind of told me the workaround that if your doctor gives you pushback, get yourself to a hematologist, tell them what you have experienced, and also maybe mention whether it's totally true or not, that there's a history of stroke or clotting issues in your own family, which there might actually be. For a lot of the girls that have had recurrent losses, they'll all tell me about like the grandmother that had the stroke, or their father, oh yeah, my dad has like a heart condition, or my mom has this. So you get yourself to a hematologist, you tell them about the family history and about your losses, and they will do the panel on you. And that's like a good starting point, because at the very least you have someone who's willing to support you and maybe prescribe if you just need a blood thinner to get through the pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
But there's doctors, I think, all over the country. I always say to go to preventmiscarriage.com, Dr. Braverman's site, and he has referrals for physicians all over the world that understand this work and take it seriously. My book Body Belief, I think, is really helpful. The book Is Your Body Baby Friendly by Dr. Alan Beers is super helpful. But this is where you have to become your own advocate. And I just don't think you take the everything's fine or it's all your eggs as the answer, because it's not usually right.
Yeah. I think if an answer is not sitting right with you, or you're just sitting there thinking like, that's not exactly it's something else.
That's it. Listen to your instincts. And that's like, I'll hear that all the time. You nailed it. Like, girls will say that, like, something just didn't sound right when he said, even the girl I told you when he said 85% of your eggs are bad, and like, you're just, you're screwed. Yeah. She was like, something just like that didn't feel right to me, and I was like, cause it's not your truth, like, do our eggs go bad? Sure. Like, do we all have bad eggs inside of us? 100% we do, no matter what your age is, but if you're still menstruating and ovulating, and especially if you're still getting pregnant, your body is saying like, I want to do this. It's just not the best environment for that embryo to develop in. And that's where you have the power. You do really have the power over changing that environment, which will impact the quality of that embryo and the quality of the pregnancy.
I love that, because it feels very empowering. And I think there are so many women that are experiencing recurrent loss, or they're not getting pregnant as quickly as they were hoping. And it's like, what can I do? It just feels like you have nothing else that you can try. And I think, there's not a lot of information out there about some of the things that you do, or reproductive immunology. Like that's
No,
just,
not at all.
that's
And there's
just
so
not
many
out there.
doctors that poo-poo it, that they're like, oh, there's no data. And one thing I like to point out to girls is like, they're not absolutely wrong. There's not a ton of data to support reproductive immunology. And that is because what is happening to you, to all the, you know, the yous listening, is rare. You guys, it's like a rare pregnancy loss is common in the 20%. One loss, maybe one loss, one pregnancy, one loss, one pregnancy, like to term pregnancy. That happens too. But the back-to-back losses is actually, like, I forget what the percentage is, but it's pretty low. I think it's under 10% of the women that actually go through this. So many of the fertility doctors do not get exposed to this. Or if they do, those girls leave their practice and they find somebody else to work with, and they don't keep tabs on that case, you know. So to them, it's like it really does for them all come down to the egg and the woman's age and whether or not you're going to respond well to their protocol. And so, you know, it does take a little extra legwork to find the right doctors to support you, but they're out there. And I do think as autoimmunity increases, you know, the recurrent pregnancy losses are going up. And so we'll get more and more specialized. And I even see doctors that 5 years ago poo-pooed it all are now like, you know, I think you should take the baby aspirin. You know what? We're going to look into endometritis, and you know what? I'm going to do the natural killer test on you, you know, or, you know, there's something to this Hashimoto's. I want you to see so-and-so. It's very interesting, you know, even in New York City, where I'm starting to see, like, they're not necessarily totally on board, but they're like, yeah, no, I'll support you if you do those meds and go see so-and-so. Or, you know, let's look into that. You know, you see it. So the tides are changing, but
That's good.
it's still new information for so many people.
Yeah.
And there's, you know, there's all different theories, and you could have had several losses and every one of them was tested and it was genetically abnormal. So I can see why your doctors would say you needed a donor, but there's also a whole other school of thought that it's the inflammation inside the body and the blood flow that's actually causing the abnormality, not that all your eggs are bad. Interesting way to look at it, you know? So yeah. Don't take no for an answer. I think that's the bottom line.
I think that is the big takeaway. And I mean, it's definitely good to know that it seems like things are starting to change out there a little bit.
Which is devastating, because that means more women going through more of these horrible losses and not getting the right support. Or I don't know, it's just what I see all the time and you see, so it's becoming more normal to us. But, you know, I'll hear it. Like I do my Instagram lives, and it's like, you know, there's a couple hundred women watching, and like more than one will be like, yeah, I've just had 3 losses in the last year and a half. And it's like, who told you that was normal? It's appalling to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it's upsetting.
I think that could be part of the emotional piece too, is just that, like, it feels too much after a while to stand up to a doctor who, you know, has like 5 minutes with you looking at his watch to be like, you know, can I go on to the next patient now? And you're like, but I have all these questions, and is it this, and can I get this? And like, it can be very intimidating, and it just feels overwhelming when you're already dealing with so much.
Unfortunately too, what does happen is like, you have to go and find these doctors that typically are out of network and they charge more money, and, you know, and all the things, or like a functional medicine doctor, or like someone like me. And it's an added expense when you've already like hit your bottom, you know, and you're not sure that it's really scientifically valid. You know, you're scared, you're really scared. And so you're not getting any direction. And so I can see like there's a barrier to entry, you know, but I think you can piece it together really well too, of like on your own and just being your own detective. I think especially with that Dr. Beer's book, like I think that's always a great place to start, is your body baby friendly? Some of it's like overwhelming and scary, but it gives you a good, I think, you know, Western medicine background to what could potentially be going wrong. And like, then, you know, the test to ask for and find the right doctors to support you. But it is also your body, your baby, your money. And so I think you choose, like if a fertility clinic isn't giving you the right answers, or they're just pushing you down donor eggs, really, you know, sit with that and see what feels right for you. But you know, you could pick and choose where to spend your money in different places too.
Yes. I think that's a really good idea, is just it has to feel right to you, and you can sit with it and you can figure out what is best for you and your partner, you and your family.
All the things.
Yeah.
But I think important to know is you're not alone. And I think there's a lot of peace in that. It does lift the shame when you hear other women's stories. And that's it too, of like, everybody goes down the rabbit hole of like all the women who were their age and wound up, didn't their odds and their statistics, all the women know that. But I would also encourage you to go down the rabbit hole and find, we call the stories of hope on our site, but they exist everywhere on the internet, of what women in your shoes did and what worked for them.
Yeah.
And you will find the stories and you will figure out, like, that's how a lot of them do, like, right. And Nancy's Nook is a big endometriosis Facebook group, but a lot of the endometriosis girls are the ones that have the recurrent pregnancy losses. That community is incredible. Like, girls all the time are like, I found my doctor through here, and then I talked to this one. So just start, lift the shame for yourself, share your story, and you will be so surprised to then figure out like the other stories that what women have gone through similar to you and what worked for them. And that's a good way to start to piece it together, because I think the social proof is really what helps build the confidence of like, all right, she's got a similar story to me and it worked out for her. So I'm going to just do what she did. And I'm going to see, even if my doctor doesn't totally agree, you know what I mean? Because her doctor didn't agree either. I'll tell you that right now, and she figured it out, and you can too, but it does feel daunting and overwhelming. And but you're not alone in this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So where can the listeners connect with you online?
Sure. My website, aimeeraupp.com, has pretty much everything you need. And then every week on Instagram and Facebook, I go live on, I think it's Thursdays at, oh my gosh, I can't even remember, at noon. Thursdays at noon, I think I go live, or is it Fridays? I don't remember. We just changed it recently. Isn't this funny? But every week I do go live, and I'm usually talking about like some important health topic of, that pertains to mental, emotional, physical, or nutritional health. So I think that's a really good way for just to collect free information that I spew out all the time. My YouTube channel, I have tons of I think good information there that, I think even just that information in my books, you could piece it all together on your own too. You especially the self-starter types, you don't need to pay a lot of money to like coach with people, or, you can start to piece it together and find the hope that you need. And, like Laura says too, of just like tune into what feels right for you and follow that path.
Great. Well, Aimee, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your expertise with us.
Thank you so much for creating the space for this. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. And don't forget to check out our show notes for details on joining our Facebook group and for following along on Instagram. If you would like a free recurrent pregnancy loss lab checklist, go to miscarriagehopedesk.com/labs. Again, that's miscarriagehopedesk.com/LABS to get your free downloadable checklist. And for even more resources, visit the Miscarriage Hope Desk website, where we have stories of hope plus an entire library of evidence-based research articles related to fertility and miscarriage. If you enjoyed this episode, I would so appreciate it if you rate, reviewed, and subscribed to the Miscarriage Hope Desk podcast. Your ratings and reviews will help others to find us. I want to wrap up by saying that if you are going through a miscarriage, my heart goes out to you, and as difficult as your experience may be, I want you to know that you are not alone and that you will find a path forward.